And that's fine. So guys, we're gonna get started because there's people online.
Okay. They just released one.
Hey, Roy, so we're gonna get started. There's people online waiting. So, all right, it's gonna work good. And I'm gonna have some residents come up and help with this, but. All right. Everybody's far enough back where you don't feel like you're being involved?
No, we're too far back.
Yes. All right, Bob, so tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready when you are.
All right.
Take one step here, half step here.
Officers have to go up
Is
there.
that good? Yes.
Yes.
All right, so Bob says we're ready to go. Welcome to everybody that's watching online and the 40 or 50 people in the room here. Thank you for coming. This is our first general meeting for the year. My name is Dave Zabin, and I'll introduce the rest of the officers in a moment. First of all, you probably can't read this at home, but I want to thank everybody, the former officers, in particular David Millen, who served us for 4 years, well beyond the call of duty. Thank you so much. Sophie Chichkoff, last year's treasurer, Daniel Retz, site director, Brad Bass, activities director, and Julie Spiegler, webmaster. Thank you guys for your help and service to the club. Now I'll introduce the 2018 officers, some of which are here, some of which are maybe watching from home. Again, I'm Dave Zabin. I've been in BAPA for 10 years, I think 11 years in April, and figured it was about time I carried my weight a little bit and help out, so I'm serving this year as president. Roy, stand up and say hello to everybody. Roy Saptarshi, vice president.
Hey, everyone.
Not sure how Dave roped all of us into this, but
You didn't get paid?
Sherry, no.
It was those bribes.
The bribes. Okay, and Daniel Bremen serving again as secretary. How many years have you been a member or an officer of the club?
I would say I was again in the BRS since 25 years, and I think I am part of the BAPA since it was created.
Oh my goodness.
In the late 80s, something like that.
Well, thank you very much for your service as the treasurer, returning. Martin Hannibal, treasurer this year, taking over for Sophie. And Bob Posey is, I know nobody's probably seen pictures of Bob, so he likes to hide in the shadows, except when he's making dramatic.
We're in a chicken suit.
Yeah, we're in a chicken suit. So Bob will be returning as safety coordinator. Evan Cohen, not here tonight, but he's our site director.
I accept this award on his behalf.
Is he online?
He's online right now.
All right, Evan, thank you for joining the team here. Chip, do you want to say hi to everybody, or everybody knows you?
Yeah, I've been around a long time. So.
Chip's
How long have you
going
been around?
as a officer, is this not the first time as an officer anyway? Anyways, you can speak about all that. We'll have a slide up here for you to come up and talk about activities for the year. Shane Easton, wherever you are, looped in as webmaster, although Roy's been taking a big part of that over till we know any better. We're just going to keep flying forward, and we'll talk about that in a few slides. And then Susan Kent, who keeps telling me that she's not officially an officer, but she is our our membership coordinator, which is a huge job, and thank you, Susan, for continuing to do that. All right, old business. I've never done this before, in case you haven't noticed. I'm not very familiar with this. I've been to meetings, so I know at some point everybody says any old business, so I thought I'd throw that in there. Don't know if we have any old business to discuss, but I guess anything old at this point is going to be new again, so we'll get to that at the end. Membership renewal. So Susan is online but couldn't be here tonight. So I just wanted to throw out there that anybody that's listening or reads this in the minutes or hasn't renewed for the year, the website is currently in transition, and so you can't renew via the website. Yes, Bob.
Julie would like it to be known that it's supposed to be officer reports, then old business, then new business. I guess there's a process.
There's Robert's Rules of Order.
And that is,
I know that there is that. I don't know what they are.
There's also Julie's Rules of Order in which.
All right, so any other comments and suggestions like that, send me your name and comments, and you'll be on the list of candidates for next year's elections. But no, thank you. I'll try to get that order correct next time. Anyway, for the 2018 membership, if you haven't renewed, it's $30. You can send it via PayPal to treasurer@sfbapa.org, or somehow I'll get a hold of one of us and we'll walk you through it. Website update. So I'll let Roy speak to some of this when he finishes his bite of dinner. Just kind of a little bit of background. Everybody kind of knows we've been struggling with getting a new website up and running for a while, and we kind of hit some dead ends, and Roy graciously took on an attempt to just get something that we can get up and running quickly, because we are under a lot of pressure from USPA to have an adequate website that puts important information out there to pilots about our site regulations and so forth. So Roy, you want to speak to that, and you want me to put up the? Or just basically.
I'll send it, yeah, I'll send it. So, there's not that much to say. I think that was good background, or there is a little bit of urgency to it, and as well, it's definitely time to kind of get onto a sustainable solution that works, and, you know, is it sort of all very dependent. One of the goals that I have, or I proposed rather, everyone's input is of course welcome, but what I'm shooting for is to never again have the concept of a webmaster, really, because that implies that there's some magical wizardry that you have to have some person do and request and whatever. So I'd like to have a situation going forward where if whoever the future safety director may be or whatever, if they will need to post some information or put something up, that they can just do it relatively instantaneously with zero technical skills. So that's sort of my guiding principle on how to go about this. And then, so, you know, we have a decent prototype going, and I hope to make a lot more progress this weekend, and then kind of share it. And if we like it, then, you know, we can just go live with it. And at the very least, meet the most immediate urgent requirements that RRG is asking for, where they want our website to have some specific things about the sites. And that's like the really practical thing. And then after that, it's sort of, you know, having something nice and welcoming and modern, as well as paying attention to the membership coordination and payment needs. So I'm trying to make it as uncomplicated as possible.
Anybody? Any questions, comments? We'll move on. Yes, Ben?
I'm curious which sites BAPA administrates.
I'm sorry?
I'm curious which sites BAPA are doing websites. What's that talking about websites?
Yeah, so the direction we're getting from USPA is that even though we only have one or two sites really that we directly administer, right, that are insured sites, they expect us to have information about all the Bay Area sites, even the ones we don't, just information where to go to get information, so that pilots, visiting pilots or members of BAPA looking, I want to fly Diablo, give them all the information, whether it's links or site, you know, guidelines and so forth. Just because we don't particularly administer it, that doesn't get us off the hook from their point of view of providing that information.
Just put on the link to fly Zephyr.
And we talked about the fact that, you know, Jeff Greenbaum has a very good intro site for Muscle Rock, which we don't regulate, but you know, they're asking us to provide even for Muscle Rock all the information.
Kim's got very thorough descriptions of all the sites.
Yep. All right, so that's the website.
And what's the timing for all this?
They wanted us to have it within 30 days, and that was probably 30 days ago.
Okay, yeah, but what's realistic on our side?
So for the main thing that they want, I think we can be live. I'm gonna put some work into it this weekend. I think we're close enough. At this point, it's just like a content issue. Bob helped me out a lot with some of the stuff that needs to be there. I'll work with everyone, and then I think we can be live in, you know, a week and a half. So
And then, so like, okay, so I administer Diablo, and if I have other content that would be helpful, is that get it to you, or I can put it on the site, or how's that work?
Well, definitely get it to me, and then we can talk about, yeah, just look up with me and we'll figure it out.
Can you give officers a URL for the non-live site?
Yeah, you guys
make suggestions?
Oh, you're not on the, yes, I will get it to you. Maybe you weren't on the list. I was
Well, maybe I
sending it
should
around. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Oh, also, if anyone has cool pictures and stuff from all your flying adventures, send them to me too.
Yeah, the site is very content rich, and right now there's a lot of placeholder photos. It'd be nice to get real photos that people don't mind putting on.
Just for curiosity, do you have whatever in there?
Whether I'm hoping to lean on Evan to help out a little bit with the content.
What, have you looked at the Venmo site?
Yeah, I mean, there's all the existing links and stuff that, I can.
Venmo, in my opinion, has the best, all the weather information you need to know to fly at 11. And if you follow that model for all the sites, you'd be pretty far along.
Right, we're definitely going to leverage a lot of existing content just to get the thing up and running, and then we can tweak it.
Absolutely. And I'm not the content expert, certainly not on weather, so anybody has info, just send it to me, and I want to have it.
Chip?
Kim must be watching online because she just sent me a text and said, I'm happy to do more to keep Zephyr up to date. BAPA should feel free to link to it.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. All right. USPA renewal update. Bob worked very hard on getting us through that. Bob, do you have anything to say about it other than they gave us conditional, I guess, renewal put forward? Hop on in there.
It was painful.
Yeah,
Working with YRG is an interesting organization. I'm certainly, not intimately familiar, but I can speak from my experience. They have a challenging role, which is to try and raise the bar for instruction as well as to increase the safety of our organization, USHBA as a whole. In doing so, they're wanting all the clubs, including BAPA, to be more thorough and responsible about analyzing site risk. And without that, they are not going to approve our membership chapter renewal until they are satisfied that we've done a thorough look at the risks of the sites that we manage and some that we sort of are affiliated with. Along those lines, BAPA currently administers Maury Point and the Stables. David Sondergeld has done a fantastic job making sure that we have everything in place and did the risk mitigation guides, and that's all fine. BAPA, in partnership with Wings of Regalo, administers Diablo. So that is something that is an ongoing discussion as far as, and we'll speak to that here in a little bit, as far as the direction we want to take that. And so we have those. Then we have this issue of Muscle Rock, which is unregulated, and we'll talk about the direction of Muscle Rock going forward, but we needed to do a risk mitigation guide for Muscle Rock as well. This is an interesting thing. Why would BAPA have to do that? Well, what they're trying to do is get every single Wild West site to have at least some sort of risk mitigation guide and get the club who is closest to kind of take over that. Not that BAPA has any jurisdiction over places like Muscle Rock, but the intent is to at least raise awareness and start getting people thinking about what can be done to improve. Because every time I go up to Muscle Rock, things happen. It is a risk, and as USHBA members, when we go to Muscle Rock, we are covered by the third-party liability insurance that USHBA provides. So even though BAPA as a club isn't liable, because this is not a site that we manage, USHBA as an organization is liable and has to pay for events that happen, based on my experience, some degree of regularity at places like Muscle Rock. So it's a challenging position to be in, to try and regulate this, herd all these cats, and try and come up with a risk mitigation guide for a place where, we we don't have any sort of official relationship with the landowner. So along those lines, risk mitigation guides, site guidelines, and things like that need to be presented from the chapter's website. And my understanding is Kim's website, as good as it is, or Jeff Greenbob's, as good as it is, this RRG renewal process is specific to BAPA. So the links that BAPA has on our website need to clearly state mooring point and the stables, which are administered by BAPA, have these site regulations, these guidelines. This is what you need to do and who you need to talk to in order to safely fly these sites and help people be educated about the risks and processes in place to fly these sites. And then when it comes to a place like Ed Levin, we need to say, Ed Levin is administered by the Links of Regalo. Here's a link to the website where you can find the site guidelines, and so that there aren't dueling sources of information and single source of risk and site procedures and things like that. But I think we owe it to the paragliding community in the Bay Area to say, hey, these are all the sites that are in the Bay Area, and there's a whole bunch of hurdles you need to jump through in order to fly these sites. And here's where we can get you pointed in the right direction for that. Even though BAPA as an organization carries no jurisdiction or liability when it comes to this. So that said, we did get a conditional approval the night before our insurance expired from the RRG after a long conversation. And it was conditional on continued improvement in the areas of getting our website up to date, which Roy's doing a great job with, and our risk mitigation guides, which have yet to be approved or receive feedback from the RRG. So that said, I sensed there was a degree of urgency, but not a specific timeline for getting the website done. I agree with kind of this two-step process. Let's get something in place. Get it done, move forward, and then we need to find something more permanent, which has membership and the ability for users to edit content, officers to be selected, and all these sort of nice-to-have feature lists. And that may take a longer process. So I'm excited that we can get something up, anything up, edit it, get it to a longer-term sustainable, put it on the back burner, and then get something going. So. That's all I have. I got to go back to answering that.
All right, well, thank you.
See ya.
Thank you, Bob. And then also, just every member of this club owes Bob a great debt of gratitude for a lot of hours work to get us to where we are today. So, with that. All right, moving right along. Quick note of thanks about the Muscle Rock Wind Station to Rick and Shane. I don't know if they're even listening, but if you see them, thank them, buy them a beer, whatever. Apparently they've taken on themselves to do a great service that a lot of us are going to benefit from. All right, back to Muscle Rock regulating. So one of the topics that kept coming up in conversation with USPA was their opinion that they would like us to have a more active role in working toward making Muscle Rock a regulated site. And I've been around long enough to know that most members of this club, at least the ones that have invested a lot of time and interest in it, and most of the people that I think regularly fly the site, would shake their heads and say, no, we don't want to do that. And we pressed and pressed them for a reason. Well, why should we? And why do you want to do that? And I think Bob already spoke to their comments around why. I don't think it's something we can just turn our backs on and say, nah, we're not going to do it. We have to continue to keep the discussions alive. Yeah.
Primary reason is that the landowner will not talk to us.
Right. So I know historically,
Daily City will not talk to us.
Historically, when they were approached.
I think maybe one of these, because 2 years ago, I was in a meeting with one Daily City librarian that was a former city council, and he considered paragliding very helpful, and there are no negative opinion about us. So I would say, if we go to Daily City, and I think we should be able to have a dialogue with them.
So, yeah, I think what we're up against is historically there's been sort of a hand to the face. No, we're not going to talk to you about it. You know, we're not going to shut you down, but we're not going to officially allow it, right? And I think what USPA wants us to do is just due diligence around that conversation. If we feel as a club that that's the right thing to do and go forward, if we don't, then we're going to have to go back to them with strong reasons and justifications why we don't want to do that.
Just a comment here. Wouldn't it be lovely if every site in the nation was like Muscle Rock, where you had to do, where you don't need a club, and don't forget, it's probably the lawyers that are telling you that bullshit, whereas the laws are written that we shouldn't have to jump through all these hoops to go fly it, because the laws say if you don't charge money for it, you're not liable. So why are we jumping through all these made-up hoops when the laws are clear that if you do a high-risk sport like anybody, if you don't charge money for it, there's no liability. It's the frickin' lawyers. That's why we're having to do the RRG and jump through all these hoops, because the frickin' lawyers want to get paid. Let's tell them to fuck off.
All right, comments noted.
I think, I just want to add to that, because I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think with Muscle Rock, we need to just kind of keep USPA happy, but I.
Why? No, you don't. Tell them to fuck off. It's an unregulated site.
Well, that's one way to do it too, but we do have to get our club renewed and we have to get our insurance.
Tell them it's not gonna happen. It's an unregulated site. Just because you want us to do work, fuck you.
I remember a few years ago when paragliders flew on the power line, and to avoid the problem, BAPA paid the expense. So basically, even if we are not responsible, whatever happened, we will be involved and paying for the damage.
Well, I'm not saying don't do the right thing, but, you know, I think Muscle Rock should be applauded and Daly City should be applauded for allowing flying to happen with no regulation. Wow, what a lovely thing. And don't we wish all the landowners would have that same approach? They should be applauded, and we should probably go there and give them some public praise for having that kind of attitude and be very supportive of that. Because, I mean, my God, that is the right answer, not Ed 11.
All right.
Not, I mean, Wings of Regalo has been working for 13 years to open Coyote Reservoir, which is owned by the same people that own Ed 11, and yet we've been flying Ed 11 for 40 years, and yet they said yes, but they still haven't approved the special use permit for 13 years. Talk about jumping through hoops, oh my God.
How many years?
13.
I think it's longer than that.
Oh, actually, that might be even short. It might be 14 or 15 years.
All right, well, if anybody wants to further that discussion and conversation, I guess Evan, as our site director, will be penalized for not being here, and he'll have to receive those comments and phone calls, and maybe he can spin up a group that wants to dive more deeply into that. And when we get more direction from USPA, we'll forward that to him and see what comes of it. It's complicated as well, because it's not just Daly City, right? It's the GGNRA that owns from the road to the beach. And so it's you know, I've enjoyed it for 10 years exactly how it is. I don't personally want it to change, but I also don't want to risk not getting renewed and not getting access to the insurance that comes with the renewal. So,
if the city somehow gets the message that it either has to be a regulated site, or not allow flying, they're going to say, let's not allow flying.
Right.
Who
So
says
it's
it has to be
very
regulated?
Well, I'm saying if USPA or we under pressure from USPA.
USPA doesn't control shit. USPA only controls sites, site insurance.
My point is-
That's all they control.
If anybody talks to Daly City about regulating site, it's very use, because they're just as likely as not to say, we don't want that bullshit, we can't fly there anymore.
Right, and I think that's a sentiment of most members of the club.
Yeah.
From what I've talked to people, and what I've read, but we'll,
Right, which is why we should push back pretty hard on Ushka to say, making it a regulated site is really an untenable option. If you force us to do that, you're gonna kill the site.
Well,
and I asked the guy point blank, I said, don't we take on more risk by regulating it than not regulating it? And he did, Bob, I don't know if you heard differently, but.
Who was the point contact?
Steve Rohrbaugh.
Steve Rohrbaugh.
So we had a conversation with Steve, and this came up, Muscle Rock, and we told him it's unregulated. There's not a whole lot we can do, and he kind of pushed us a little bit, but I don't feel like he pushed us to where we had to do something.
So the reason why I asked that is, do you think he's trying to make an impression or set the law? And that's a huge distinction that we have, just a sec, that's a huge distinction that we have to think about with all the sites that we have, is if the mindset that we're trying, that Ushka RRG are trying to get us into is about risk mitigation, but they ain't ever really going to close a site, especially one as critical as the dump. If we can get some form of regulation, control, no matter how lax it is, that's a step forward. But to have active control on it, that ain't ever going to happen. And the impression I get with someone like Steve is it's these nudgings to move us to think about things that are hopefully going to protect us in the long run, not just the very short run. That's my impression. I don't know whether that's the sort of thing that you guys have picked up when you talk.
No, I think you're right. I mean, Steve, his concern is that somebody's going to fly the dumps, which there's a huge amount of risk for Ushka if somebody goes into the power lines, flies into the houses, flies into a bystander or whatever, and they have Ushka insurance. Ushka's going to have to pay. And it's an unregulated site, so Ushka's in a position to where they're like, hey, what is your plan to protect us?
And that's been going on for a decade at least. We've had, I know there's been several claims of people flying into garages, houses, roofs, all that stuff's been damaged, power lines.
Right.
And Ushka's covered it, and there doesn't seem to be too much fallout from it afterwards.
What happens if somebody who carries a Ushka card, a member of Ushka, goes and flies at some completely random place
Like BLM land.
and causes a problem?
We're very specific of what the problem is, because different problems get dealt with in different ways.
I mean, do they cancel your Ushka membership?
Describe the problem. Come up with a particular scenario, because what you described is so broad that it's hard to give an actual response of what I think would happen.
But I think the point is, why is Muscle Rock any different than a spot in Half Moon Bay or a spot in Santa Cruz? Somebody, pioneers a new site and wrecks some property or hurts somebody. It's no different than Muscle Rock, right? It's just that there's a high density of pilots in Muscle Rock.
For example, you can go fly GOAT, which is BLM land. Anybody can fly it anytime. There's absolutely no regulation on BLM land. If the government says, use it forever what you want, just don't hurt the land, and you can do anything you want on it. And so you don't need Ushka to go fly BLM land because, again, there's no regulation and there's no lawyers. So
That's true, except for, I spoke to Steve Rohrbaugh recently. I had a very similar conversation to Bob, and there is a push to try and, I don't know if regulate is the right word, but to include and indoctrinate all sites that are risk outliers.
good luck with that one.
Well, yeah, that's
That could happen.
So myself and Wayne are probably the two pilots that really fly there almost exclusively. Well, actually, there's a paradise flying there. It's really an interesting site to fly, but it is on BLM. Who administrates it? I'm not really sure.
Nobody.
But when you fly there as a Wishbird insured, Wishbird is covering you, so they do have that shield.
But wouldn't the difference be that VML Land, as you said, they're allowing you to fly there, right? Daly City is like,
Yeah, they are.
they're not,
That's what BLM does too. They,
No, we have a relationship with them. They built a road for us. They're not saying you can't.
BLM.
Yeah. They're not allowing it, they're just
No,
saying.
they
"Oh,
allow it.
They are actively, they built a road for us
Okay,
specifically. Road up to launch, they built for pilots.
okay.
To bring this discussion perhaps to a close, this comes up every 3, 4, 5 years. And I think our response should be to gently and politely push back on USHPA and say, we've looked at this many times over the decades. Daly City has shown no interest whatsoever in working with us on regulation. Pushing them to work with us on regulation is as likely as not to get the site closed down. And so we BAPA think it's an untenable idea.
And I'll just say, yeah, I don't think it's the responsibility of BAPA, this organization, to try and regulate a site if there's no cohesive decision to move forward on it. That's not our responsibility.
Well, it sounds like there's a key cohesive decision not to regulate.
There is the strong union to not regulate, and I would say that the RRG is doing their job to try and mitigate risk and reduce, potential liability.
right, I think there's things we're gonna do that will inch that forward for them, right? If we're better, or if our website is better to inform visiting pilots and our own membership about Muscle Rock, that's inching it forward to where we were offering them something, right?
Absolutely. Now, just say Julie Spiegler did comment that the density at Muscle Rock is the issue. Our insurance no longer applies if a non-USHPA member is involved, which is more likely to happen there as there are more non-USHPA pilots flying. Yeah, yes, Rock. So
I have a point. I see like maybe one solution is the USHPA says if it's not regulated site, insurance doesn't apply. How do you feel about flying there then if you're personally liable for anything?
Well, thankfully, that's not the issue. I mean, we're covered even if
Not yet.
Not
Right. But if USHPA were to say,
You collapse too many things, I think.
Possibly.
Here. So, as an USHPA member, you have an accident and I fly into your car. This is the easiest one. I fly into your car and I damage your car, and I get the impression that third-party insurance carriage and USHPA will pay for damage to your car, as it will to me flying into a power line and zapping people's microwaves or whatever. If I'm not a member of USHPA and I fly into your car, I'm personally liable for repairing damage to your car. So if I'm flying to Muscle Rock and I damage someone's garage by flying into there, I have to pay for that repair. So in terms of, what's really happening at Muscle Rock, well, if you're a member of USHPA, USHPA will essentially cover for any third-party damage that you incur, even though it's an unregulated site. The point about being an unregulated site and an uninsured site means that the landowner, there is no cover for the landowner at Muscle Rock. So, for example, one of the scenarios, and this is why I asked you to be very specific, Chip. One scenario is, and I know Muscle Rock's call for this one, is someone has driven to across the dumps, and they're not a pilot, and they've driven up to what's the tall takeoff?
Coyote?
Wildcat?
No, it's not one of those two. Walkers. Thank you. And they drive their car up to Walkers, and they're not a pilot. And they're observing, and someone flies into their car. Stay with me, please. Now, the car owner can sue the landowner for damage incurred on that site. Okay? Do you get the scenario here? Now, if that was an insured site, then the USHPA would cover the landowner for being sued by the guy who's driven across that land, who's just had a pilot fly into them. So there's this very specific of what scenario you're dealing with these types of cover. So, for example, Muscle Rock, the only risk that we have is a bystander, someone flying into a bystander and then suing Daly City or the GGNRA, depending upon where it actually happened, and GGNRA kind of footing the bill for it, and then getting pissed and screw you guys, you need to do something about it. That's the kind of scenario where there's going to be crap that happens on GGNRA and Daly City are going to start getting upset with us.
Well,
That's the scenario.
then you turn it into, okay, it's now a site, and we'll do all the stuff and cover it under the insurance. That's tricky. No, but you don't do it until they say we want it. Because right now they're saying we don't want it.
Right,
Okay,
but
we don't want it, we're not gonna give it to you.
anyway, I think this is probably a bigger discussion than we want to have in this general meeting, but maybe Evan can follow up on it. But there are some valid points there, and if somebody kicks somebody's teeth out on the way to the LZ, and that person sues Daly City, they're not. It's just as likely that a non-USPA pilot does that. I think most pilots there are non-USPA, right? At any given day. So, I mean, it's complicated, and so we'll probably pick that up in a longer discussion. All right, anybody good to move on? All right, Diablo. So Ben and Evan, who's not here. So Ben, is there anything?
Ed is.
Ed, you
That is our
site administrator for Diablo?
Yeah.
Right.
You're good.
That's why bringing people together.
So, that was an interesting one because we should
Do you want
say.
to come up here just because there are people watching online?
Sure.
And then looking at a blank screen.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Grab it as my live. Hello, everyone. Ben Dunn. I'm sure I've probably flown with most of them somewhere.
Further over to the right.
There we go. No, you.
This way? This way?
Good.
I'm looking down. Okay, I'm sitting down somewhere. So anyway, so I'm president of Wings Gala, and we administrate Ed Levin, Mission, and Diablo. And Diablo has been joint administrated for as long as I can remember by BAPA and Wings Gala. And Ushta had asked, not quite demanded yet, but asked for a single point of contact and single administrative entity to organize the site, basically. So I think what is going to happen is Robert Moore will head up the site committee, which is kind of how Wings Gala does things, and have a bunch of BAPA members on the committee that help get the site procedures figured out so that they cover hang gliding, paragliding, speed flying, and whatever else, movings, all those things. I don't think I have much more information than that, but I think there was maybe the issue of conceding administration, if that's a thing from BAPA to Wings Gala.
Yeah, well, and let me raise the question. If we forego any sort of involvement from BAPA, as far as Diablo, what's left for BAPA to administer? At what point do we become a social organization as opposed
Well, let's back up, and I think we need to discuss the issues why there's talk about administering it under one club. The main issue is that if we do them separately, we each have to have our own insurance policy. If we do it as one club, we can have one insurance policy.
But I think we've had one insurance policy for quite some time, right? BAPA writes a check once a year to.
Yes, well, correct, and that's exactly what we did at Mount Tam also. But now that USPA is its own insurance company essentially, they said up at Mount Tam, well, if you have a hang gliding administration and you have a paragliding administration, you have two separate insurance entities, so you each have to pay the full insurance. And at CAM, they had higher limits required, so it's like, it was a lot of money. It's going to be like $1,000 for each club. And so we said, well, that's crazy. Let's do whatever we need to do to just pay one insurance policy. And with Diablo, USHPA is kind of saying the same thing. They're saying, well, BAPA administers paragliding and WAR administers hang gliding, therefore you each need your own insurance policies. And to me, that's ridiculous. If we can pay one insurance policy, that's better.
So this has been an issue only for 2 years. It's only been since the RRG was formed.
Yes.
Okay, so when it was formed and we read over what the requirements were, it was pretty clear, at least from my reading, that if we were going to be two separate clubs operating there, we needed to have two insurances. And so I had talked to Robert about it, but he necessary, and I think he's generally been nervous that approaching the state park on just about anything can cause problems. And so it's like, don't rock the boat. So the RRG didn't come after us last year. So, I don't, whether we actually had an issue with our insurance or not, I don't know. But they, at least it looks like from the emails, they're being pretty clear that this is what the requirement is, this is the expectation. Although one question that's come up is, okay, well, it sounds like we're insured, but we haven't really merged the two organizations under WAR. So where are we?
Yes, and Julie Spiegler says it's not paragliding versus hang gliding, it's how many chapters are named on the certificate. So just by being a chapter, it could be a separate chapter that's also paragliding. Yeah. So each chapter is going to have to receive approval for their additional insurance, which has the expense associated with it. So where do we stand right now? BAPA, my understanding is that BAPA has been removed, no longer is showing additional insurance for Diablo. So the insurance would only be through, and so as a club, we are not affiliated directly with Diablo.
Correct. And the issue that Steve had was that on our website, we say that BAPA administers Diablo.
For paragliding.
For paragliding. So I think the solution may be to get rid of that and say WAR administers Diablo for hang gliding and paragliding, and maybe you guys have a special paragliding administrator or something that's a member of that.
Yeah, so the plan that was discussed over email was that I would sit on their site committee for Diablo as the BAPA representative, and other people could as well.
As a paragliding
pilot. Oh, I see. So not as a BAPA
board member.
It's just as a
Yeah.
as a paraglider pilot.
Yeah.
Who happens to be a BAPA member.
Right, but that's exactly what we're doing with CAM. So Wally Anderson is the paragliding administrator for Makuga. So he does everything the same that he's done for years with paragliding, only his position is with Makuga and not BAPA. But everything else is the same. It's kind of a paperwork formality. And that's fine. We should be fine with that.
It brings us back to Bob's point, what's left? More point is the stables, right?
Yep.
Which is okay.
Well, yeah.
I mean, Wings Regala is never going to say, you can't fly it. So.
The only issue with conceding, and no disrespect to Wings Regala, but if we concede it, then we as a paragliding-centric organization lose a little bit of influence on how we want to move forward. An example of this is the discussion about electronic signage at Diablo. It's a paragliding issue because we have a lot of pilots who fly Diablo who like to hike up either from a Southgate entrance or from the LZ. And as part of the Hike and Fly Club, you go to the ranger station to sign in. As part of that process is
out of the way.
It's out of the way.
Yeah.
To the point it's kind of onerous. So we would benefit greatly from having electronic signing, which means bringing the issue up with the park.
Yes.
Which is an issue potentially under the umbrella of everything being under wings of Regalo, because we don't want to disrupt the status quo, which I also respect, because we don't want to lose anything.
But on the other hand, I think you know, if you got on the site committee, you would be a voting member, and you make it happen. I spoke to Robert gets it. You know, he didn't realize that there were people walking up from the base, and it is outside. So it totally makes sense to have electronic signing. I talked to him Monday, I think, and then he spoke to you afterwards. Yeah. So yeah, he's open to that, and I sent him an example of how it's done at Marina State Beach. Also has an electronic sign-in, and still keeps the paper log as well. There's no sign-in. So it's kind of complicated, but that can be addressed in the future too. Is that something that the state park has brought up, or is that something BAPA is?
The electronic sign-in?
The sign-out.
Oh, no, they haven't. I just proposed it as, it would be more safety conscious or responsible. It would be more like filing a flight plan and closing a flight plan when you're done, and then you know that anybody who was on the mountain, is off the mountain in the best safe.
I think that was probably the biggest point of contention there, because it puts the state in a position where if someone doesn't sign out, they feel obligated to do something, not to find you, but something.
Yes.
And that, I think that was really low pressure.
Yeah. And that's fine with me. I think the main issue is the hiking.
So, I mean, make it a two-step process. Do the signing thing first electronically. But where Ishba come in, then they want to see a single site procedure for site use guide that needs to come from both disciplines and maybe speed wings as well. For a coherent set of usage guidelines with risk analysis and safety mitigation, and that needs participation from both disciplines. So.
A couple comments from the Keynote Gallery. Evan Cohen, site director, says, in his opinion, putting everything under WR is not that big of a deal. I think most of the pilots who fly Diablo right now, paraglide pilots at least, are already members of WR. So we're part of the same club on that side of it too. And Julie also wants it to be on the RRG will require, and that's in all caps, it to be WR administers Diablo, full stop. Just like TAM, not a BAPA kind of helps out, participates, but don't look this way, which is kind of what it is right now.
Right. It seems fair enough to me.
And I think that might also be something that we need to have on all the other satellite sites, like Zephyr, for example. Make sure it's clear on all these other sites that it's war administered and not BAPA. So.
I think on that side, I don't think she mentions who administers it. She just has
I think it'd be worthwhile just to check.
True, but the only one that the RRG, as far as the club is concerned about, is our website needs to accurately reflect what we administer and what we don't. Everything else is out of our jurisdiction. It's out of our control.
Yes.
But we can reach out to him and try and get information because a lot of people use her site.
So, well, how about, I would move that BAPA decide to relinquish any management of ownership or management of Diablo to Wings of Regala. So
I second the motion.
Can I add to that motion? And that you are the paragliding representative on the war committee.
You as
That me as Ed Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, yes,
Because
right, yeah, not in perpetuity, yes, that, I would certainly, yes, and that I, participate as a USHPA member, or as a war member, a paragliding war member
Yes.
of the site committee, yes.
So I have two questions. How many BAPA members are also Wings of Gallo members? And how many BAPA members that fly Diablo are not Wings of Gallo members? Any guesstimates on those?
Very few.
I'd say they're all ones of Gallo.
And part of that's because in order to fly mission,
Yes,
which is,
right, yeah.
you know,
The one
Well,
that
it's
most
just
people
Diablo.
Can I ask a question?
besides different weather conditions, yeah.
Different, that's why, well, I have the sticker for TAM, so I'm a BAPA member. And should I have to be member of the TAM club?
No.
When I did it, I didn't. I think I was asked to be that. And I know what happened, for example, with war. If I am that's something else. Before, I have to be a member of war and a member of BAPA. All right, being a member of BAPA, I can fly the other sides.
You don't have to be a member of BAPA to fly any sites.
But do you have to be a member of war to fly the war regulated sites?
I thought you did, yeah.
Pilot.
Yes.
Any more than 2 days a year, then you have to be a member, right?
That's your answer.
So if I'm gonna fly more than 2 days, I have to be a member. And BAPA pays half of the insurance of war of the sites.
Well,
For example, in town, they
it's
are.
for one site.
That's why I'm asking.
So there's a motion,
That's why I'm
right?
asking.
We have to address the
Well,
motion.
but actually, wait a second, that's a very
It's-
good question.
Yeah.
I think
Are
that-
we gonna continue to pay
we pay
captain
half of
insurance for Diablo? And my opinion is that we should continue, that's what we've been doing. And I don't think,
Well, certainly, Wings of Gallo will take the money, but after you do this change, if it goes through, I don't think you would be required to, but, you know, Wings of Gallo will take the money.
It seems like it'd be double payment, honestly, if all the members were already war members.
that's a good one.
Yeah, you have to be a war member, so there would then be at least a need for BAPA to subsidize it, right?
There's no additional expense on the part of WR because it's already listed as an additional insured for their chapter. Correct?
Say that again?
If we make this change, if we have Diablo become part of WR, correct?
Correct.
There's no additional expense for RRG insurance for WR.
No, but we've been offsetting their expense by paying half.
We've been splitting.
Most of the time, every year, I think you missed a year or two in the past.
Well, we missed it last year, but I think we paid out.
Do we risk having a loss of funds to be able to do that if we make this change?
Well, we're gonna gain funds because we're not gonna try to pay the insurance, but war would have to pay more.
I don't know that they
Wings of
would.
Gallo, because
But
the
it's not a lot of
subsidy
money.
may go away or may not go away,
But the current expense that Wings of Regalo pays.
Stays the same.
Stays the same,
Except they've
but they
enjoyed,
won't get our money,
Yeah, right.
I mean, under that circumstance.
Right.
Well, I think to pass this, war has to kind of agree. We can't say, hey, war, we're gonna.
No, right.
We're gonna do this.
It's a partnership.
Yeah, war's got to agree also.
I don't think.
But I feel like-
Disagree.
I feel like Ben made a good point though, that if everyone's more anyway, then aren't we already paying for it?
Well, and this.
well, except that we're using BAPA funds to subsidize it.
No, I know, I'm saying it makes sense to not because we're already paying for it.
Right.
More members.
Well, and what is there any risk to war's sustainability without that $130 or whatever it is a year?
No.
Well, and the other thing is, I don't believe you have to be a war member to fly Diablo as a paraglider.
Julie actually just answered that.
Actually, you do.
It's the same 2-day rule. So if you fly more than 2 days in a year, you are required to be a member of Winter
Is
Valley.
that true, right?
Yes, it is.
Because if BAPA has administered the paragliding site, why does that have anything to do with Windsor Regatta?
I've got my computer in my car. So you're saying that, or she is saying that under our site regulations, that you have to be a WAR member as well as a BAPA member?
WAR only covers hang gliding regulations here.
Right, okay, yes, and I just.
Honestly, I don't think we have accessible information about flying Diablo because of the website issue. So I don't know what the answer is, other than the documents that have.
So it's on Facebook, I know that much. And I think I.
Yeah, so-
Stole your documents to do
Right.
the insurance.
Yes, so I've read the war regulations, and it says you need to be a war member.
For paragliding?
No, it doesn't talk about paragliding at all.
For flying.
Right.
Right, it talks about hang gliding.
We have a visiting pilot rule, so if you're a visiting pilot and only gonna fly 2 days, you don't have to be a member
At Diablo,
at any site.
but that's for hang gliding.
No, that's for any
So,
free flying.
Right, but BAPA has been administering Diablo. in the
Right.
past. So why would WAR have anything to do with that?
Well, we didn't.
they currently don't, is the answer.
Right.
But the first item on the agenda for the site committee is to redo the site procedures to include it for paragliding and ski wings, kind of things that Ushba wants.
Yeah, so that's the plan. We don't plan to submit those to the state park right away because the supervising ranger just retired like in the last week, and they want to let that stabilize before presenting some change to them. We're going to figure out how long that is appropriate to be. But, and I think we need to figure out whether the RRG has anything to say about that or not.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been proposed and seconded, right?
Aye.
And stand by. And the motion is that BAPA relinquish administration of paragliding at Diablo under the condition that Ed Wilson takes ownership of it as current paragliding representative on the site committee, and that will transfer it to anybody that follows your shoes.
Yeah.
But that we would have a paragliding representative on that site committee going forward, and we'll relinquish, is that fairly stated?
I think we have to decide about the insurance though. I mean, whether the whole thing seems like it should include, do we subsidize the insurance or not? Do we, and we will continue to subsidize the insurance or we won't?
The question is.
Well, that's a very important thing.
Well, can we vote on this motion and then follow it with a second motion, whether or not we want to
Okay,
subsidize?
sure. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but again, WAR has to be on board too. So.
Sounds like they are.
How do we know that?
Let me just go back. Let's vote on the issue about relinquishing control of Diablo to WAR. Either we do that or we talk about the insurance issues and the implications of who's paying for the insurance at Diablo, whether BAPA's still going to make a contribution or WAR's going to pay for all of it. Which one of those do you want to deal with first?
Well, I think the insurance component is complicated. What's simple is whether or not BAPA wants to go forward continuing to subsidize half the insurance costs for WAR.
So the point being is that if WAR is paying for the insurance for Diablo, that will cover hang gliders and paragliders. So it's not as if BAPA needs to have its own underwritten policy for Diablo like it has done before. So in fact, there's no additional cost to WAR.
There's just the loss of the BAPA.
Wait. There is no additional cost to WAR, but there is a saving to BAPA. Okay?
That's not true. You're missing a piece of the puzzle here.
What?
Because what hasn't changed yet is the requirement that to fly Diablo, you have to be a member of WAR.
Okay. Yeah,
That has not changed. So what Ed is saying is that they're discussing changing that. They haven't done it yet.
But I think
So
it would
there's
be
a chicken
fair.
and egg in here.
I think,
Which comes first?
I think it would be fair for pilots, members of any club, if I'm paying BAPA as a member, because BAPA is paying another club, and I want to say war, because it can be war, it can be CAM. If war, or CAM ask me, oh, now we have to be a member because of insurance, or
Right.
war, as a pilot, member of BAPA, will say, wow, I think I'm double spending here.
Yeah.
I'm paying double. That's the thing I think pilots would think, and we have to think about that. Like, of course, if we're BAPA members, we can fly there because we're BAPA members, and BAPA pays insurance. Okay, I think that's fair.
Yes, yeah.
Without getting into economics.
And is there any urgency around this decision, or should we wait till WAR makes their determination about required membership, and then we make our decision?
I would imagine more would require membership right now, but I don't think we would expect half payment or something.
The
There's
subsidy.
a very small subset of people that affects that aren't already WR members.
Right, yeah.
Like maybe 3 or 4 people. So we're spending a lot of time with people. We can figure out their names and then be like, hey, what do you think about this 3 or 4 people? But it's not affecting a huge population because those pilots already are WR members.
Yeah, I get back to one of the previous issues, which is the potential loss of revenue to help support and subsidize.
I don't think it's significant.
Okay.
How much does that we pay like $150 a year?
Yeah, let's just vote on that.
Yeah, I was thinking.
So yeah, let's vote on the motion as I described it. And then if somebody wants to propose a motion, whether or not we continue the subsidy, we can do that immediately following.
Okay.
So the motion is whether we're going to relinquish control over Diablo to Windsor Regalo. And I guess that's it, because we can't really put any condition on them to do it. We're just asking that they have a paragliding representative on the site. Right? We can't really vote that that's a requirement because if there's nobody here, the club, there's members here, but not anybody that can accept that condition.
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on that. I will commit to, I will be that person. I don't do, let's see, unless we want to say something about, that we as a club will commit to providing one committee member or something like that. I only want,
Okay, well, that's up to that club's business.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of up to you, as the administrator, if you want to do what's going to make.
Yeah,
We will support you.
Yeah, okay.
That's what
So
it is.
but I agree, it doesn't really seem like it fits in the motion.
Yeah, so that-
in
Is the
voting.
site committee elected?
The chairman is appointed and then the chairman picks.
Right, and that's in the top line, with the wings regard top lines. But, I see something that needs changing. It's that each wing type should have a representative for each site. I don't think that is currently the case, but I think it should be.
Yeah.
That's a proposal that I should make yesterday.
All right, so the motion is to relinquish control over Diablo to Windsor Regalo.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unopposed. And then let's follow it up with, I'll make the motion that we continue to support Windsor Regalo with paying half of the insurance for Diablo, with the intention that that will buy us goodwill and good faith that we will be represented in decisions for our wing type at Diablo. Everybody want to second that?
I think the sums are trivial.
Yes.
I think the sums are trivial. The goodwill is important, but as Bob says, the feasibility of BAPA becomes more questionable when it has fewer sites that it actually has access control. I think, Mark, put your hand up. So.
That ship has sailed. We just passed it. Right?
I'm saying that, it's a trivial sum.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if
So,
we're
in second,
It shouldn't even be an issue. I kind of think let war take over. Big payment.
Then you can go to post.
Yeah.
I just have a comment, and that is, and I made this comment years ago. I would like to see BAPA merge with Queens Regala. Because as a hang glider pilot, I don't get why, well, I understand the history of why BAPA formed, but from a practical standpoint, you know, you guys spent a bunch of time talking about the website. Well, guess what? Windsor Gallo has the exact same issues. And basically by having two organizations that represent free flight within the area, all the traditional club stuff like the website, paying your dues, tracking your membership, all that kind of stuff, that's 100% duplicative effort. And to be a member for a paraglider, you basically have to be a member of BAPA and Windsor Gallo, so you're double paying, plus you're doubling all the work. And guess what? If you took all the work that both Windsor Gallo and BAPA do and cut that in half by merging the clubs, look at all that free labor you're giving up. And if we do this successfully, you could say, hey, all you volunteers that are now obsolete because somebody, you know, because we've merged, so why don't the people that are basically, quote, out of a job, why don't you go do something cool and something different, and we can do more stuff with less percentage effort from everybody in the club, because all of a sudden this duplicative work that both clubs are required to do to exist disappears immediately just with a merge. And
Okay,
so,
I think we all get the point and the idea behind it, and I've heard it before as well. I don't know what the pros and cons are about it, but I feel like we're running late, and that's probably another meeting. Right?
Okay, but you guys ought to really think about it, because it's a win-win solution. And I think the history is, well, you know, those hang glider pilots guys, they hate us. And
no, they hate each other. They hate each other also.
No,
there's 30 years of bad blood that people are screaming at each other. And still, so if people can leave all their problems at home and work on the future and work on creating free flight, I think it's a great idea. However, every meeting I've ever gone to is a bunch of people who yelled at each other in 1988 and are still yelling at each other about the same thing. And so it's a big problem. Yeah, it's the WR meetings that unfortunately
he tries to do such a good job to hold them together.
and it's unraveled.
All right, guys.
For a dollar back, go check out the
Right. Everybody can spit up all those stories and debate. If we really want to talk about this, we'll get it as an agenda item for our next meeting. If you guys want to put it on your agenda for your next meeting, I'm a member of WAR as well, and I'll show up.
But I think you guys should seriously consider that,
Yeah,
because
okay,
it really would help
Understood.
the whole free flight community, and would get rid of a lot of the tedious, non-value added labor, and we can take that labor.
Right.
We can take that
So there's a
labor
motion.
and turn it into value added labor, and it would be fantastic for both sides.
All right. So the motion is whether or not we want to continue subsidizing insurance. I made the motion. There's been no second. It's been seconded. Anybody in favor of subsidizing? Anybody opposed? I think the ayes have it by a short margin. So we'll find out what that amount is, Ben, and we'll carry our share of it again this year, and then we'll revisit next year whether we want to do that in perpetuity.
That's a pretty good $116.
All right, moving on. Chip, time for our activities calendar. There's only 2 more items, so hang with us.
Yeah.
I will try and make this quick. So with some help from Kim Galvin, and with access to Joe's website for league events, I made a little calendar that I put a spreadsheet up on the Google groups that you can all have a look at. And I tried to make BAPA events not coincide with either a sprint or a NorCal League weekend. So the only things that you can look at what I've got there, you can access the Google groups. The only events that are sort of carved in stone at the moment are the first one, because it's coming up soon, so April 14th. April 14th, we're going to go to Potato. And then October 6th, at the end of the flying season, I've got a reservation at our usual campground in Big Sur, Plastic Creek. So we'll do that for the weekend of the 6th, which is a 3-day holiday weekend, Columbus Day. Couple of things that would be really nice when we get the website working is an all members email list, so that we can do things like evite things to coordinate these things. At the moment, there's no good way to do that. The other thing that I want to do a little bit differently this year is, because we don't have Diablo, sick of Potato, so I want to see if BAPA members are willing to travel a little further. Have a fly-in at Hat Creek, maybe one at Whaleback, maybe even as far as Woodrat, I don't know. Also, with respect to events and meetings, we talked about this before we actually started the formal meeting, that I think having a Saturday evening barbecue combo with a meeting, either at the gazebo at Ed Levin or out at Muscle Rock, where people could fly all day on Saturday, not have to drive through commute traffic to go to a meeting, and have some of our meetings in the context of that kind of an event. So with that said, I'll say if anybody has other ideas about where we would like to go for events or other types of events, speak up now or let me know, and we'll try and slot them in.
One comment from the RRG perspective, from what I gathered from the conversation, because I think all 3 of us heard different things. If we have a meeting at Muscle Rock, it is a meeting, not a fly-in. There cannot be a flying event at Muscle Rock, since it's an unregulated site which BAPA does not manage.
Right.
So is that a note, just to be careful how we socialize?
It's just like the website, the verbiage is important. That's all it is.
Good point.
The second issue is one that I want to defer to Jug. For events that we have, the RRG is going to want BAPA to have coverage, right?
No.
No, the event is a barbecue and meeting.
Okay. But for
Talk about flying.
yeah, I was conflating. So that was one thing.
Okay.
So Big Sur, for example.
Potato, Big Sur.
What about them?
Well, what I understand from the conversation we had with Steve is that if we have a fly-in at an unregulated site like Potato, we have to have a risk mitigation plan on file. Not necessarily, not insurance.
Specific to that event or the site in general?
Specific to the site.
I don't know, Jug. Yeah, I'd love to hear from Jug on this.
That's my understanding.
So I know that for my lead meetings, I have insurance for all of them. So I'll get a certificate of insurance 2 days before any lead meeting. And I have risk mitigation plans for every single site that we visit.
Right.
And
you're not in the Bushwick Club.
no, but there was an interesting thing that got brought up 2 days ago on the phone that leads me on to something else. And that is, I need BAPA to sponsor me and my events for those sites that we fly at that are not club sites. So Potato, Tahoe, and Owens Valley. Okay. No one administers them, we have no control on them, but I need to get a sponsor. Now,
What does sponsor mean?
I don't really know, but I need to
Yeah, I sponsor you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I sponsor you.
A chapter has to sponsor my events.
And who's put chatting?
And who's the chapter? I'm not.
Because that's the only way you're gonna get insurance.
Pardon?
That's the only way you can get insurance.
It didn't happen last year. So
Right.
these are new things that happened for this year. And just so everyone's aware, the whole insurance thing is a moving target. So while I thought I understood what was going on last year, and you're nodding your head, this year is a different target and we've got to change. And I bet you next year the target's going to be different again as we, USHPA, RRG, or PASA, has a better understanding of where our loopholes are. So, and remember, this is all about protecting free flight. People get pissed off. It's all about protecting us.
About protecting who's.
No, it's about protecting us. The big picture is protecting us. Not protecting us. So, back to Bob, your point of, do you need to, so I have ACE, accredited competitions and events, and that gives me access to insurance. For any fly-in, you really should register them as ACE and buy, if appropriate, insurance. Now, why should you? Now, for me, it's different because my events are paid for. But for BAPA and fly-ins, I think the issue is things happening with bystanders at Potato Hill LZ. You know, there's a guy on a motorbike who's there and someone flies into him at an event. I think we need to figure out what's our risk to those bystanders, because that's our ultimate problem. It's not pilot and pilot's car. It's pilot and someone who's not a pilot.
Judge, what's the bottom line? For each person, it's how much ahead, because I think it's only not so much for the event, and that could just charge for the fly-ins, that amount.
Or they can just put themselves.
But you know the amount, right?
So I pay $250 for ACE for all of my events.
In total.
In total. And I have the ability to adjust which sites and which days with 2 days notice. And I think there's a special case on this.
So,
Can I ask a question?
Now, I might be a special case because everyone understands I've been doing this for a long period of time, and I've been trying to improve everything every year. And people kind of get a sense of what goes on and what doesn't go on.
is there an official definition of an event? And what distinguishes that from,
So,
5 people going on mission and flying?
Well, that's a good question.
So I know there was a guy in Oregon who wanted to run a repack clinic, and he was going to charge. And he could not. He had to. He was an instructor, and he had to use his single student day thing for that. And he was pissed off that he was being charged for it. And I think the key distinction is there's money change at any point. Now, with a fly-in, and it's worth checking. If someone if there's money changing hands for someone to drive up, then there's a hole in the system there because money changing hands, and you might not be covered. So there are all these little subtle loopholes that are worth checking in with the office. Maybe Julie knows right now of whether those are things that need to be considered for any of the BAPA flights. It's the driver who's not a BAPA member.
I guess sure all BAPA fines would be $200. Right?
The $250 is what I'm being charged.
For all of your events.
Right. That is for my application for ACE. Now, USHPA is paying RRG, the insurance. Apparently, it's $5 per person.
So what would BAPA be for a fine? There's 2 fines right now, maybe 20 people.
Call up the office, talk to Julie, find out what the number is. But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if there is a number.
Okay. My question though is going to be, if your club or league is not a USHPA club league, how right? Are they? Are you?
What do you mean?
You said you need sponsorship.
I need chapter sponsorship for sites that are not managed by a club,
No, but how is it that they're requiring that of you?
because they said.
In order for what? In order for you to get your members insured?
In order for me to have insurance for anyone and anything that happens on the beach.
To cover you.
It covers everyone.
So Doug,
Right, but they're already BAPA members, aren't they?
Everyone has to be.
Yeah.
Sure. Everyone has to be Ushba.
is the implication that if I go on Facebook and say, hey, who wants to go to Wood Rat this week? Am I now liable for things that happen on that trip? I mean,
If there's money exchanged,
no money, just people going.
I don't think so.
But I think when the club operates in that function, it's the GGR.
Julie says money is the determining issue.
Okay.
So it depends on whether or not there is a compensation.
So-
Shared expenses are different.
So fly-ins never had that. Never
No,
had.
clients have never had money exchange.
Never. The next thing is, if BAPA's name on it, if BAPA's name is on it, then the chapter potentially has liability. ACE insurance is to protect the organizers. So one of the issues is if you need sponsorship, now BAPA runs into the issue where we're gonna have to figure out what we need to do to have protection.
But Bob,
RG.
does that make me an organizer for BAPA events? Or whoever happens
I
to
think
be
it's the club's
activities?
organizer.
Yeah,
Not-
the
not
club,
person.
the club is organizing, it's not you.
And you're protected anyway as an officer of the club.
So the work that you're doing here for the
But
activities.
the club may have to buy insurance for fly-ins?
Only if there's money
Only if
exchanged.
there's money exchange. Okay,
No money exchange, no problem.
no big deal.
And this is what I don't know, is that the answer? We don't have to do anything else if we're gonna go fly Potato Hill as a BAPA organization with the RRG? And this
It
is
sounds
something.
like we have to find out.
No, I think what
Yeah.
Julie's saying is why there's no money exchange. But if you're paying the driver,
But that gets ridiculous, right? Well, I bought a burger for my friend on the way up. Like,
Yeah, here's $5, yeah.
yeah.
Government employees can't buy their.
The BAPA does not receive any money.
Julie says the
Nothing
RRG
goes to the treasurer of BAPA.
Julie says the RRG wants the club to buy ACE insurance for clients. So there we go, even if it's just a flying.
Right, but it sounds like it's a trivial amount, roughly.
Yeah, again, the second item of the night is about $100 or $200.
So I think that's something we can absorb twice a year. So it's not good to worry about it. Oh, however many clients we do.
It costs more than.
No, but it's not just the money, it's what are the hoops to get that and what documentation should have to produce,
risk
blah,
mitigation
blah, blah.
plan.
He's got one.
Easier.
It's, I can tell you, having gone through the RRG
it's
process,
just-
it's hours of work. You need to find somebody who's gonna do.
We have a hard enough time getting clients together without 6 hours of bureaucratic work.
We can exchange the procedures
Or let's just not have clients
with the
and
sponsorship.
just Facebook it.
Camping trips.
Yeah.
It sounds like more clarity is needed from the experts and then maybe a discussion with the officers.
They're gonna kill fly-ins.
Use experts against-
It's not the money,
Yes.
but if it's hours and hours of work.
Yeah.
Julie says the
But
chapter has
a lot of these
collected
sites
members.
have
Money was.
risk mitigation documents already, right? It would seem silly for us to have to generate new ones every time.
Yeah, if Jug is willing to let us plagiarize his.
So if we're sponsoring him.
We're sponsored, so.
If you're gonna sponsor me, fine.
Yeah.
So are you guys gonna, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, are we gonna set some action items? Sounds like they're.
I don't think we have enough.
Is Judge putting forth a motion to sponsor him?
Let's
No,
have
that's a
the,
complicated issue too much.
let's take on the issue for, officer discussion, with Jug to figure out what our options are, potential liability and expenses.
By April 14th.
For fly-ins, are you talking about specifically fly-ins or sponsorship?
For clients and sponsorship, because we might be able to get
Right,
them
we don't
all
know.
into one.
Okay. Anything else? We'll make sure we get that activities, proposed activities list on the Facebook page as well, for those who don't use Google Docs. We're gonna talk quickly about an item, everybody probably knows about this, memberships with BAPA, there's access to a Mountain Hardware discount. Roy went there recently and saved some coin on some stuff, right?
I did. So I went on Sunday, and I just walked up and said I'm from BAPA. First woman had no idea what I was getting back. He's like, "Oh yeah, BAPA, great." He knew everything. He knew the whole history. Apparently, we're like the first people to ever have this privilege at their store. Anyway, so they were fine, and there was no list. He didn't have a list. They couldn't find one.
It's the second book in the back. Yeah, that's where to get the other book.
They didn't know, but it was cool. I just showed them my. Well, really, the guy said, "Look, if you know BAPA, you are BAPA probably." So that was that, and I showed him I knew what they did. But it sounds like you have new information.
So Ricardo Salinas, who I don't know if he's instrumental in setting this up in the beginning, but he's.
No, it wasn't. It was Chris Killian, who used to work for Mountain Hardware.
Okay, well, Ricardo's kind of in the.
Back in 2006, and he used to get those. He used to come out to meetings and give us all kinds of goodies that we could steal from Mountain Hardware.
Well, I think Ricardo's been managing the relationship, and he sent me this note to pass along to everybody for the meeting. So the protocol to accessing that discount is changing this year. We're on an invitation basis with them. Invites come out 3 or 4 times a year, and they have a specific date range, about 2 weeks. So we'll make these notifications available to the membership as they become available.
Or you just walked in and it was okay.
I did, and the guy I spoke with was all, he was like, "Oh yeah, BAPA, you're one of the special ones that have all year privileges and blah blah blah." But I don't know if this is, he manages a relationship, so this is probably more accurate than what happened to me.
Right, so this is from Ricardo today, sent me this information. You can see there, it says the purchase is to BAPA members plus 4 guests. The featured brands at the store, Columbia, Sorrel, Mountain Hardware, and Prana. Anyway, he expects the next invitation will come out in May, and we'll forward it to the group.
Yeah. It turns out, if you forget about this limited window that is new, you can go to a local bar and grill, and they will give you a pass to the Mountain Hardware store. So like, at one of the restaurants nearby the Mountain Hardware store, they have a pass, and that will get you in.
Yeah,
For some reason, you go and they say no.
And that'll get anyone in.
And that's the same discount that we'll be getting?
I mean, it's just access to the store, which is the discount.
Okay.
Always very busy.
What's the name of the bar?
There's no discount.
There was somebody in one of these, and they're like, how do you guys do it? Like, we went for lunch down here.
Generally 40 to 50%.
Just yesterday.
Really well.
I just said yesterday. Or today.
Yeah, this information is from Ricardo today that I'm showing you. Ricardo emailed this to me today, but counter to this, Roy had experience last weekend? Sunday that did not require this invitation. So I think to be safe, go by the invitation timeline or find the bar and grill that's going to let you in. But that's the message we're being given right now. And now, Joe, you want to come up and?
No, I've got my agenda to talk about.
I think because of the people online, you best be up here.
Yeah, get up there, it'll just be like when you were schoolboy.
I'm ready for bed now, but I'm especially using this.
Around Japan time.
I started in New York this morning, I didn't go Easter, it was bad.
All right, so I wanted to talk about a few things. One was some of the items that came up at the USHPA board meeting, which was a couple of weeks ago in Golden. One thing I hope everyone has noticed is that the USHPA website has changed quite a bit, especially on the back end, thanks to a lot of work led by Julie. Hopefully there's a lot more info that's more accessible than it has been before and integrates with so many other databases. One of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about, and seems we've talked about a lot here, is insurance and its impact into flying. So it's definitely one of the most prominent things that's going on in the flight community within the US. And that kind of brings me up to another important thing that is really important. And that is about reporting accidents and incidents. So the way the insurance works is that if we have one incident that gets reported, and that ends up being an insurance claim, that kind of says that every incident that we have yields an insurance claim. Whereas if we report everything that happens, such as someone breaking a down tube, someone spraining an ankle when they land, someone, I don't know, you come up with all these things that have happened to you. You landed in a tree, okay? The tree probably had a bit of trouble, and your glider was okay and you were okay. So all of these things need to be reported to give an accurate idea of what our true risk is for insurance. So when we have all of these incidents that happen, you land in a tree, for example, but nothing got hurt, report it. Because it says, yeah, we do have accidents and incidents from time to time, but not all of them are life-threatening. And in doing so, what that's going to do is that's going to show that really we are a remarkably safe adventure sport, and that our risk is not particularly high. And the big picture is it'll start to drop our insurance premiums. So anywhere where anyone goes, if you see an accident, see an incident, report it. And there are ways you can report it online that mean that depending on which database you use, Julie knows this stuff really well, it becomes anonymous. So one of the databases is completely anonymous. It's you, the person reporting, and you as the person who got hurt or damaged your glider. Two of the other ones allow you to put your name in. But these are really encouraged that everyone starts to implement in order to drop our insurance costs.
Is landing out an incident?
It depends whether you died of dehydration or you walk back.
Well, I mean, in some cases, then that supports that people can land out without causing insurance claims. To your point, so I'm wondering if every time you land out, you report an incident of landing out.
Well,
Either does that help our situation or not?
were you planning on landing out, or were there conditions that forced you to land out?
I was gonna try to
I think, Mike, you're playing around in that grayness of what defines a reportable incident. And I would say, somewhere where you got slightly damaged, somewhere where you damaged some property, and that property could be a tree, it could be a car, it could be a fence. But having a bitch and walk out, I don't think really constitutes any risk, unless it's a multi-day overnight that involves helicopters and search and rescue teams. And
none of that's paid for by USHPA anyway. It's all a third party.
It's really working out how much does our insurance really cost the organisation. And if it really is exceedingly low, then guess what? Our costs will come down everywhere. Chip, you've got a frowned look. Are you tired or you didn't get it?
I don't get why having a lot of incidents that don't cost anything frequently lowers your insurance compared to having costly incidents on very rare occasions.
So the point being is that if you have one incident and that is exceedingly expensive, then it suggests that every time you have an incident, it's going to be very expensive.
The answer is because you're trying to divide by zero, which goes to infinity.
If you have lots of incidents and only one of those is expensive, then the risk of paying out is 1 over quite a lot, as opposed to the risk of paying out. Right. Okay. So please can everyone be cognitive of that and try and use the website to enter data. It'll go into various platforms. One is AIR's accident and incident reporting system. One goes to the lawyer that's completely anonymous. And I can't remember what the third one is. Julie does such a great job about explaining this one.
I'm still a little confused because I understand the need for a denominator. But the denominator you're suggesting is low or zero cost incidences. Why can't the denominator be months or years? It's the same idea. You've got to divide your expensive.
I think having a whole bunch of accident and incident reports which are not costly provides a data set for which the insurance company, RRG, can say, hey, here are risks which can be mitigated to help prevent the error chain for some additional costly events. So it's more about trying to improve the safety of the sport to limit the potential of these things which require a lot of control and becoming expensive as opposed to.
I can see the merit in the approach. Who recommended the approach, and why wouldn't you then want to have lots of incidents that lead to nothing?
I don't think we want to have lots of incidents. I think we want to report every time we have an incident.
So I believe in next month's magazine, there's going to be
Yes,
a pretty good explanation.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's next month, but there's a special issue that will deal with a lot of the insurance aspects of Bushbert and the RRG.
It's not right, it makes it not the boogeyman, right? It's not this like mysterious thing, and they can understand it better overall.
Yes.
And
It's
that
the
helps them make models.
All right. There were lots of other things that were discussed, but those are probably going to be released at some other point in time. I don't know how many of you actually read USHPA minutes. How many of you read them? Okay. And how many of you read any of the changes that come out to SOPs that get released a month beforehand? Okay. So these are great mechanisms for you to have a say in how you feel recommendations are being promoted. And if you have a strong opinion, you can actually voice that. And it's strongly encouraged as part of outreach to the community is look at some of these changes that are being suggested. And if you disagree with them, disagree with them. Because that is an opportune time before they become written in stone SOPs that everyone has to abide by. So there are lots of great opportunities. Hopefully the office doesn't send too many emails out. It's worth reading everything that does come out because it does impact us all in these very subtle but important ways. All right. The other thing on my agenda was BAPA to sponsor my league meets. You're going to push that out. So that means that my next league meet is not going to get insurance at Potato Hill next weekend. That's fine.
Not necessarily. We just don't know what you're asking, right? You want us to say yes without telling us what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know. This is what Martin asked me yesterday, and he said he was going away for a week. I was like, oh, shit, I'm screwed.
Chuck, who are you working with on that? Is that Steve?
Martin.
That's Martin.
Martin.
But will that go through Steve with yards?
So the way it works is that I submit my ACE application to Martin, and then he's got lots of questions, and then I answer those back. And one of them this year is what's the supporting chapter? And I said, well, I don't have any because most of the sites we go to aren't supported by chapters. You know, the distinction being whaleback and tollhouse. And those ones are quite easy, but the other ones, he said, well, you need to get supporting chapter because the SOP is written that insurance can only be given to events supported by chapters. So, and this is a new one for this year, and this is all part of unintended consequences that trickles down when SOPs get changed without reading. So that's why this thing kind of would be nice to have. Otherwise, just do the event and hope no one gets hurt.
So what would be required would be a risk mitigation.
I've got risk mitigation plans for everything.
You just need a USHPA chapter.
I just need an USHPA chapter.
Why is jug a USHPA chapter? What do you need?
I don't want to call that crap associated with becoming
What are the requirements?
What, for a chapter?
Yeah.
I don't know, you probably have to have a website. I've got a website. You probably have to have a membership. I don't have a membership. You probably have to have lots of different officers. Well,
Chuck, what do you need from this? A motion that says BAPA will sponsor the leagues?
Yeah.
No. We don't know.
We don't know what
We don't know
that
what it
entails. But what I would say is that if you can find out what it entails, don't we have the option of an officer vote?
No. We used to have the option through the website of a membership vote. but I don't think it's
Why don't
functional
you make a
anymore.
motion to tentatively approve it, given,
Given what?
given
1 month.
whatever you need from him, and that if it passes, that the officers can finalize that.
Right, delegate the decision.
Or just
to the
delegate
officers.
to the officers.
Delegate the decision to the officers in this particular.
Yeah, we can do that.
That's a good plan.
That way you get the approval from the members, and but the officers have.
I second that motion.
All right, so the motion that's been offered and seconded is that the membership will allow the officers to make a determination when we get all the information about sponsoring the league and make that decision.
It's not sponsoring the league, right? It's sponsoring Potato Hill as a.
No, you need a sponsor
Potato Hill,
for all the events.
all the sites at Tar, and all the sites in the Owens Valley that we use.
Oh, I see. So we're
Because,
sponsoring.
because
sponsoring the league.
no club administers any of those sites.
Right, so we're sponsoring the league.
Yeah.
But it's sponsoring, yeah.
Whereas
because
this
I thought it
motion
was
just sponsor
sponsoring
Potato
sites.
Hill for the next
Yeah.
month, the next event until further notice.
Well, let's get it, so the motion's been seconded, we're gonna have an officer powwow. Joe, we'd like information about liability, expense, exposure, what does this mean?
No expense.
We need to have this in writing.
No, I'm telling you, there's no
Don't
expense.
spend the time, we need to have this in writing.
What?
We need to have this on writing.
Yes.
Don't spend your time explaining what it
In
is.
writing.
Oh, it's
Okay.
right.
So give us
Explain.
So the motion is that the membership will allow the officers to make a determination on sponsoring this. I guess all of them, or just one of them, or
All of them at non-club,
at non-club sites.
yes,
Okay.
which is, I don't know.
How about just a general motion, you'll defer to the officers to sponsor jogging in the way that is needed?
It makes sense. Once we get the information needed to make that determination.
That's the motion.
Right.
That's good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Motion passes
All
unopposed.
right, so I guess the next thing I was going to do was talk about league. Who doesn't know about the XE League?
I know a little bit.
Anyone online?
Reiterate that it's open to both anybody and everybody.
Anyone online who hasn't come out?
We have 8 watching now.
Who's on?
Julie, Evan, probably Susan, I don't have anybody, I don't know who else.
All right.
I think Jesse,
I think Kim's on there.
Kim,
Okay, so
people we know.
how do I get to browser page? So I've been running the Northern California Cross Country League from I think 2005. It started off by York, who started by Jorg Ewald in I don't know 2002 or 2003.
So is this weekend a no-go?
Yeah. So there's a website for it all. Here we go. So here's the website. So the league is all about trying to get people to fly further than they would do on their own. Knowing that there's guaranteed retrieve and there's someone looking after your ass. That's really what it's about. Some people come out to it thinking, you know, it's a great mechanism of flying with people. Some people think it's a great way of flying further than I would do on my own. And some people think it's a great way of beating Josh Cohn. So, you know, depending upon which hat you're wearing, people come out and do that. Ultimately, it's about flying further than you would do on your own. And having lots of people in the air marking the thermals, having well-defined routes that tend to work, giving you access to places that you probably would do on your own, and know that there's a driver who's going to pick you up when you land eventually. That's really what it's about. I was fortunate several years ago, Eric Bloom, he's made a few videos.
So my name's Jody. I go on.
Eric Bloom, he made this great promo video for me that I've kind of been pushing to give people an idea what Tending the League's about. You'll see various characters in there talking about their experiences and happy faces when they make goal, And I know that the website is kind of outdated a little, but it's very functional in what it does. So there's two leagues. There's a sprint league for junior pilots. That's kind of fishbowl league. Tasks are under 30K. Try and keep people in the air on task for about an hour and a half. Everyone is always within sight of a good LZ, so it's not particularly bold. You don't have to make particularly bold moves, but it gets people into the spirit of what cross-country flying is like and what the leagues are like. And then the next advance from that is the XC League. And the XC League is a bit bigger, a bit bolder. Typically try and keep the people in the air for 3 hours on task. Well, tasks from 60K up to 100 and something K, depending upon conditions. And they'll definitely be bigger, bolder, and there's more requirement for that. So one of the things I started to realize for the sprint, for the junior pilots, was there was a big barrier for entry coming into the XC League. And that was everyone's got to have a satellite tracker, they've got to have radios with a ham license. Thank you for getting your ham license. So you can use repeaters, but that's an interesting function. And be prepared to fly long distances and sit it out for an hour or two waiting for someone to pick you up. So there's a huge barrier in there. And the other barrier is, and it took me a while to realize, is in the junior competitions, people might have been flying for 45 minutes before the start, and that's already their longest flight. So when you're starting to do a 2-hour task on top, it's like, wow, this is really big. So that's kind of one of the other big reasons for dialing back and having the sprint league, is to lower the barrier for entry, make it easier and more accessible, so you can get a feel of what this is like and whether this is the type of flying that you really want to spend your effort into. So that's kind of what the distinction is between the sprint league and the XC league. Bigger tasks, bolder moves, probably bigger walkouts, and a bit more self-reliance. Sprint league, easy access to LZs, and hopefully not too much drama, right?
Outside of the actual competition, it's the best environment to learn how to use your instrument. There's no other environment that teaches you to learn your instrument.
And what sort of instrument do you have, Mike?
I have 3 instruments. One of them is a flight.
Okay, so so this website is kind of where a lot of things happen. Here's the calendar for the year, and you'll see that we've got a number of sites and venues. So the top one is for the XC League. The Sprint League was actually going to start this weekend. There's a ton of weather coming in, so it means that all the sites I want to use are inaccessible. So that's Potato and Toll House, they're not going to work. So we're pushing back a week. But you get an idea. So if the weather's bad, we'll push for a week. If the weather's bad at a particular site, I'll try and go for an alternative site. If that site is also bad, then I'll push the whole thing back a week. And most of that communication happens through these Google groups. I have one Google group for the XC League and one Google group for the Sprint League. Sign up for them both, you'll get all the info.
So on the XC League, where do you go out of Toll House or Vito?
Where?
Yeah.
Well, this year I'm going to set tasks for Toll House. I think we'll go to Wood Lake. It'll be, that's about 70K south.
I've done that.
Toll House.
Yeah, Toll House.
But, yeah.
Right, so we'll do some interesting bold moves there. Potato, for example, classic route is about 80K north to Pesquenta.
Okay. I'm just thinking, from hang gliders, because if I show up, I have the world's highest performing hang glider.
Great, bring it on.
And if I show up and, in my Swift, I can probably average a ground speed going downwind about somewhere between 50 and 70 miles per hour.
Oh wow, that's really fast. My God, that's almost as fast as I drive.
Well, typically when I've flown in these, we tell our drivers, as soon as you see us climbing, head to goal, and we usually beat them by 1 to 3 hours.
I'll tell the driver that when you
And
turn up.
that's on a 120-mile flight.
Cool.
So we go fast, they go slow, and they have to stop and turn, and we go straight.
Wow.
All we have to do is climb every now and then.
Fabulous.
Hey, Doug, for the sprint league, what are the requirements for somebody to participate in the sprint league? Wing type, aspect ratio?
So there was a discussion earlier in the year about P2 pilots coming out. And I had a couple of people who wanted to come out this particular weekend. They were both P2s. They had issues trying to get their P3. No, you can't. And the reason for that is that my insurance and my risk mitigation plan is all about experienced pilots of P3 and above. In terms of sprint, last year it was ENA and EMB gliders only. This year it's going to be A, B, and C. All three will get scored, but the final scores for the year in terms of who gets the trophies will only be for ENA and ENB. The cutoff for aspect ratios on gliders will be an aspect ratio of 6 for ENB, which is quite high.
So if somebody had an ENC wing,
come on out, they'll get scored, but their scores do not count to final positions at the end of the year.
So only ENAs and Bs with an aspect ratio of 6 or less will be scored, but anybody can participate.
No.
Everyone will
No.
be scored, but only less than 6 go into the trophy.
Yes.
Okay.
And you should find that in the rules page.
And if we do get some hang glider participation, same question.
I'll come up with a whole new trophy for you, just for you, Mark.
And come have fun. It's fun. It's fun.
I mean, Carl
and Zach did it.
Well, my question is which glider? I own 7 hang gliders.
That's up to you.
From Falcons to the highest performing hang glider.
Bring the highest performing one so you can beat Josh.
I can beat Josh without.
Okay.
You've solved your problem. Bring it back. And that's the lowest performing hang glider.
All right, so for those who haven't been through the website, I've also got a page on safety. And this kind of talks about safety gear and use of repeaters. So this tells you what frequencies and offsets that you want to be using if you're using any of the repeater stations. I had a discussion earlier in the year about the use of repeaters, and one of the fundamental flaws we have is no one monitors the repeater stations. Now, I actually think that if everyone is using a DeLorme, we don't need to use the repeaters. And that's going to be kind of my push for the next year. One of the things that I want to do at one of the BAPA meetings is have a specialized DeLorme training session, hopefully getting money out of Garmin to pay for it all, and where we can really make sure that we get the most out of the DeLormes, because I know I don't. I've got this really nice piece of kit, and I bet you everyone is the same.
So
I've got
that's
this really nice
opposed to
piece
spots?
of... Sorry?
That's opposed to the spot?
Yeah.
It's
Next
two-way
time, can you
versus
raise
one
your
way.
hand? So, because I think that we as a community have an awful lot to learn from using our spots and getting DeLormes and getting the most out of it. So I want to do a training session at one of the club meets, both WAR and or BAPA, because I think that these are really important tools. Anyway, so this is my page on safety, and I recommend that, just a minute, I recommend everyone checks this out. Mark.
Yeah, so is the requirement that you have either a spot or the DeLorme?
Yes.
Okay, and if you need an extra spot, I actually have a spot 1
Great.
that's old that I've never used that I'd be willing to sell because I then bought a spot 2.
Fine. So there are lots of places that you can sell, and the paragliding forum's a good one. There's several Facebook pages where you can sell your spot. You could also advertise on, no, you can't put promotion posts on that though, but there are lots of venues where you can sell your spot. Now, one of the things that happened several years ago that I'd like to highlight is one guy, he put his SOS message going out to his wife, and his wife was in another state. So he landed out in Potato Hill somewhere, and he's sending out all these SOS messages to his wife. His wife has no idea what to do, because she's getting all of these messages, not knowing who to contact and not knowing what to do. So there was quite a lot of panic associated with that whole thing. So anyone who's coming out and you've got a spot, make sure that if you're sending messages to people who aren't in the League Meet, they know who to contact in the League Meet to figure out what the hell's going on. So, and that's kind of what I've got some of this about on this page is, do your homework before you come out and set everything up. So we can function pretty sweetly. All right, for those of you who haven't come out ever, I've got this page which is first timers of what to expect. It kind of just talks through the almost minute by minute of what a League Meet day looks like. Because the worst thing is you just don't know what to expect. It can be intimidating. You've got all these big chief pilots who are thinking, shit, I'm not even going to map things down. So, but when you come and you read through this, it gives you a much better idea of what to expect and what not to expect. So it becomes a lot less intimidating. I've also got this interesting page. Wow, this looks really crap. On strategies. Oh, this is this page I made a while ago. I wonder if it works. Oh, cool. So this was a page I made many years ago, and it was. So these are some of the waypoints that we use. Oh, here we go. Look at this. So if you click on some of these waypoints, they'll have little snippets of, to cross to Snow Low, have these 5,000 feet. So it's a bit prescriptive of what you need to be able to fly some of these tasks. Oh, Black Diamond. Don't look for lift here. There's never anything here. Cruise on past. So some of these things that we've found out over the years, John Low, getting low and work the sweet spot where the two ridges join. This should reward you with a solid climb. Do not land at the boys' camp. Oh, well, that's not true anymore. You can land at the boys' camp. So there's lots of prescriptive stuff here about Felkner. If the lift is good, take the deep line. This will be faster than the line out in front where the bailout's bountiful. So lots of snippets here of what altitude you need, what things you need to watch out for when you're looking at a particular transition. So this is quite a good resource that I recommend people to use. I'm not sure how many people have used it. Mark?
Do you have all the track logs from all the years?
No. Yes.
Because the sailplane guys have tracked their stuff, and they actually, over the years, have marked the thermal sources, and they call those elevators. So if you're flying a sailplane out of Hollister, the first source of lift is elevator 1, and then you fly from elevator 1 to elevator 2 to elevator 3 to elevator 4 to elevator 5, and there's a GPS thing, and when you fly in elevator 1, you know where it is, but when you actually find it, because depending on the wind, it can be offset a little bit. Now you know what the offset is, so you know exactly where to go to hit elevator 2. And so it takes a lot of the guesswork out when you have all the track logs, because you can say, oh, here's the source of lift, here's the source of lift, and you can map all those sources of lift. And if you're a great pilot, you don't need that, because you can just look at the terrain and go, oh, there's the lift, and there's the cloud, and there's the lift. But for newbies, it might be very beneficial to have.
So there's a website called Skyways.
Yeah.
And that shows you where all the lift generators
It
are.
takes all of the tracks from all over the world, from all of the websites that people put tracks on, and it does all of those things.
What's it called?
I think it's called thermal.kk7. I will double check that.
And it focuses in on Switzerland, but you can zoom.
It's there, Mark.
So use this as
Next contest from Leonardo.
All the sources.
It may not have sailplanes, but it has all of the free flyers.
Thermal.kk7.ch.
Say again.
Thermal.kk7.ch.
And you can download both the elevators, which is waypoints, they give you global waypoints, which have the highest percentage of achieved thermals, and then they also have the skyways. So the Bayou Bravo house thermal is #1 ranked. Yeah.
For one, ranked, like, especially.
For the most amount of pilots going up.
All right, so good. So another page I've got here, oh, I should go over the rules. So I set the rules at the beginning of the season. I made some changes the other day. So this is all about how I'm doing the scoring, the parameters I'm using, all the rules that we use. So if anyone's got a dispute, always refer to the rules and then we'll sort it out. Downloads page, so this is where all the download waypoint files are, and any maps that you might wish to download and use. So there's a ton of stuff on this website that I kind of use as the main resource. Ultimately, I want to come out and fly. And if this type of thing is the sort of flying that you want to do, come out. You should find a very welcoming and receptive crowd for you to allow your flight to progress. Anyone got any questions on the lead?
What are you said the spring requirements? What are the requirements for the XC?
Just to be clear, for the sprint, everyone should have fly with a parachute, must have a radio, must have a helmet, glider and harness, and GPS will be useful.
And for the XC?
For the XC, you must have a satellite tracker, and you must have ham license and know how to use repeaters.
And P3 before.
P3.
P3 or above.
Sorry.
Oh, P3 and above for entry. If we ever did anything at mission, and we never would, it would be P4.
Good.
Anyone got any questions? Oh, and then anyone wants to try out any equipment, any Flymaster equipment, any league meet, just let me know. I'll get them configured. I'll bring them out. You can play with them.
Thank you.
So hopefully we'll get good weather, not this weekend, the weekend after, and that should kick off the sprint league at Potato Hill. This is an important one for people who've never come out to the league, because it'll be, we'll spend a lot of time talking about how to get waypoints onto instruments, how to download tracks off an instrument, how to enter thermals with lots of people. I found, some people come out and they've got complete pilot overload with flying with lots of people at close quarters, now start to fly a task, and they've already flown a lot longer than they have on any previous flight, so their pilot overload thing is off the chart. And this is all about just trying to manage expectation and know that the first one dialed back substantially with a lot more mentoring and with a task that is not particularly hard, but to keep people engaged. So they can kind of start gearing up for the harder tasks as the league progresses.
Does the sprint league typically also have, does it tend to be all newbies and judge, or is it a wide swath of very experienced people for people to learn from as well?
Mike, you want to answer that one?
It's everyone. It's from people who were really, really expert pilots for a while and are just coming back into it and want to play XC. It's people who want to just fly with a bunch of people and work on mastery skills like team flying. And there's a bunch of new people. I think the challenge with the sprint league is that people are less organized and on point than in the XC league. So when there's a thermal gaggle, they might not be actually in the core. The core is somewhere else. And so that it's kind of a funny difference, but okay.
It's part of the learning exercise. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Now there was one final thing. Anyone know of a large venue for rent for a group of maybe 100 to 200 pilots in the South Bay area?
The Computer History Museum. Computer History Museum.
4 to 6 hours.
the Computer History Museum.
Main room and breakout rooms?
All right, well, we're over 2 hours, which is too long for a meeting, but thanks everybody for contributing, and we'll see you at the next one.
All right.
Quick question?
Well, I got 2 things.